Okay, over to you, Julia.
Great, thank you, Chris. And hello, everybody. Welcome to this open meeting of the Science and Engineering Policy Committee of the National Science Board. It's quite a while since we've had an opportunity to meet. It's great to see you all today. My name is Julia Phillips. I'm the chair of the Committee on Science and Engineering Policy. Matt Malkin, who is also with us today, is the vice chair of the committee. I'm going to start by taking roll of committee members. Suresh Babu, Joan Farini Mundy, Yolanda Gill, I see you, yes, and Juan Gilbert, Dorota Brzezinska, Mel Huff, I saw
Here.
you, yes, there you are, okay, Matt Malkin,
Here.
Willie May, and Ryan Panchadsaram.
Here.
Great, thank you.
Julia, reporting to duty. I'm here. Sorry, I was 2
Oh,
minutes
thank you, Suresh. Okay, great. Okay, so I think we have a quorum and we will go ahead and get started. Are there any other board members on the call today? I don't see any and I don't hear any. We have two agenda items. The first is to consider and vote on a potential Indicators 2026 special topic on critical and emerging technology, a term that we've been hearing quite a lot, particularly lately. Then we will have an update on the development of a prototype across science and engineering indicators, a prototype index across those indicators that could enable a quantitative understanding of U.S. national and state level standing in science and engineering. Before we turn to those items, though, I think it's appropriate to update committee members on the status of Indicators 2026, given the lapse in appropriations experienced by the agency in all of October and much of November this year. The lapse, of course, introduced delays to the preparation and production of indicators reports and so many other things. And since returning in mid-November, NCSES has resumed its analytic work and is in the process of assessing impacts to timelines and deliverables. We have nothing to report about that today, but we will keep you informed as details are settled. And of course, this partnership that we have enjoyed with NCSES for so many years and even decades is incredibly important, especially as we go about producing this really important product. Are there any other discussion items before we start the agenda? Hearing none, you'll see in your materials a draft proposal for exploring the feasibility of an indicator special topic on critical and emerging technology. This would be, like all of the indicators products, policy neutral, but policy relevant. It would be a statistical report on an area of high interest to the board, to Congress, and to the White House, and an area where we believe that additional focus is appropriate and there are data available that will make it highly valuable. The proposal outlines some of the motivating policy questions that would make such a statistical report useful. And it also describes some of the data opportunities that exist and are aligned with critical technology areas, which include AI, quantum, biotech, as well as others. As with other indicators reports, the potential special topic would be prepared under the guidance of the board, but would be prepared by NCSES. Given the challenges in producing this cycle's deliverables in general that I've already mentioned, it's likely that this special topic would be released after our main reports, which are currently scheduled for the spring, probably sometime in the middle of 2026. Of course, we would strive for timing the release to be aligned with up-to-date data releases so that we could have as close to up-to-date information in that report as possible. And I will also mention that, in previous cycles, various reports, depending on data availability and other scheduling things, have been published after sort of the main summary report. So that aspect of this timing is not unprecedented. After we have this discussion, the committee members will vote on whether we should explore the feasibility of this special topic. Any comments before we get started? Okay. So what is your reaction to this proposed topic and the things that are contained in it? Matt, do you want to start as vice chair?
First of all, I'm just impressed that people like at NCSES have been able to continue doing the important things that are absolutely essential here through a very, very complicated, turbulent time. And that is really impressive to me, much appreciated. I mean, as Julia said. I do not have a lot of specifics. I mean, I want to hear from other people on the new topics, but I feel like we have to step up and do something. This is on everybody's mind. Bipartisan consensus, it seems like, on this. There aren't always consensus on other things, but man, this is what we're about. And I feel like we have a lot to say here, maybe more than we haven't really focused, on these emerging technologies, particularly in the past. So the timing seems extremely appropriate for me. My only concern is, how to do it most effectively. Anyway, so sorry, I didn't really prepare much, but that's my general.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you very much. The other thing I will point out was that we had previously identified two topics. One of them is well covered. The skilled technical workforce is well covered in the talent part of the indicators product line, and so the consensus has been that there is not a lot of value to be added by hitting it yet again on this cycle. So that kind of opened up an opportunity here. Other reactions?
Julia, focus on the nuclear technology is great. I really like it. So both fission and fusion, and also patents, and also companies associated with that too, happening all around our country right now.
Okay. Another thing that I notice that I really like about this is it gives the opportunity to bridge across the three thematic reports that we have, so that if they aren't, there's real bridging and not siloing between the different topics to be covered. And it's very easy, and you see it in a lot of the conversations going on, where one thing might be hit very strongly. I don't know, the knowledge and technology intensive industries, and yet talent isn't hit at all and explicitly recognized as being important, and vice versa. So I think that's of value. Ryan.
Oh, I mean, I think I'm adding to the choir of saying how important this report would be. I think what's important is it's almost, I think, really critical for the board to put out a report on this topic, because there has to be, I hope, based on the data, some of these areas where the U.S. is ahead, or the U.S. is at peer with other international competitors, or we're deeply behind. I think a lot of, call it the data that's out there, I mean, has been from other great groups. Like there's that wonderful Australian research that comes out every year that's kind of setting the tone for it, that uses a set of data. And so I think it's important for us to have something from within the foundation, in particular the board and the indicators team, to not only validate what they're seeing, but to really base it on measures that we deem important and critical and that we can measure. So I'm fully supportive and excited that this is a topic and that the team has bandwidth, and I'm both in shock that the bandwidth exists and so thankful that it exists, because it means a lot. And I think this report will get a lot of attention because of whatever comes out of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Joan?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I agree with what's been said. I can just continue to add to the positives. I would make one observation, which is that this area, perhaps maybe more so than others, perhaps changes rapidly. And so making sure that the mechanisms and the data places that we'll look are as current as possible, it will seem will be important. But to have such a report, to be able to use it will be great. It will also, by the way, influence further discussion around the STEM workforce and the technical workforce. Once we have this, we have a better sense then of how to look at some of those pieces as well.
Great. Thank you, Joan. Yolanda.
Yeah, I just want to also thank our colleagues from NCSCS. Really amazing what they've been able to support and what they continue to support. I think we cannot say enough, so I want to add my thanks to that. I think when we went to Congress, in the last few months, one of the times we took a document that kind of highlighted quantum and AI, but the figures were aggregated. So two comments. One is that people really were very interested and reacted to it as a very valuable output, but they always asked for the numbers to be separate, the reports to be separated for AI and for quantum. So I think if we have the data, if we have the right metadata to be able to crank these analysis for different advanced technology areas, I think that can be very helpful and put these reports in the map for decision makers.
Great, thank you. Well, so it sounds like there's a lot of support in the committee. Some great appreciation and maybe even wonder in terms of how NCSCS can handle this load given the challenges that you're under. I'm wondering if somebody from NCSCS wants to talk about that.
Hi, this is Steve Dietz. Jason Gallo, our program director, is out today, but it's good to hear all the encouraging views about this topic. We certainly recognize its importance to a lot of stakeholders and have a good deal of data across topical areas for critical and emerging technologies. So we're definitely able to support it, but we would negotiate and look at our resources in terms of the timeline we can deliver it.
Well, we certainly understand that the timeline challenges and the point that was made, and I think it was by Joan, about the speed with which all of this is evolving is important to keep in mind. And so if there is a data set that becomes available, say 2 weeks after you might have thought you might publish it, it might be worth waiting for. So I think the balancing doing it soon and getting the most recently available data is going to be a challenge, but you all do that very well. So we will look forward to hearing what your proposed timeline is and working with you on that.
Sounds good.
Okay, any more comments on this? I think we've pretty much had a vote, but we do need a vote for the record. So is there a motion to approve this special report?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
I second.
Second.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Aye.
Okay, I believe, okay, hands down. I don't think there was anybody who didn't, is anyone opposed? Okay, so that is approved unanimously. NCSCS, go forth and do your usual awesome work, and we will be in touch and look forward to watching this evolve. So thank you very much for that. Now we have a second topic, and that is the progress on the National Science and Engineering Index. You've heard about that in previous meetings. It was a long time ago, so you
Julie,
might not remember.
Breaking up.
What? Oh, what did I do? Oh, I know why. I put a piece of paper on my phone. I apologize. Okay, this should be better. Thank you for, tell me if something happens again. So the index on science and engineering indicators, you heard about that from Andrew Zydinski, who's spent a tremendous amount of time. He actually, as a fellow, was able to continue working during the lapse. And so I think he got a lot done, although he didn't have a lot of company. And so he is continuing to work on that. And in your materials that was provided for this meeting today, you have a copy of the detailed methods paper and analysis. And today, we don't want to talk about the, exactly which variables and the weighting and all of that kind of thing. We're talking about the approach. And so the prototype has extremely preliminary things in it, and those things are not to be taken to the bank by any stretch of the imagination. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the chair over to Andrew to provide us with an update.
All right. Thank you, Julia, and to the committee for the opportunity to provide an update on the National Science and Engineering Index. So I'm Andrew Zydinski, a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow in the National Science Board Office. And as this is a progress update, I will not be discussing any of the results of the index, but there are materials in your board books, which I would be happy to discuss offline if you have any questions about the results from the prototype. For now, I'll begin by updating you on some of the milestones since we decided to move forward in June to explore the index. So in July, the prototype model for the state and international index was completed. And following the completion of the prototype model, a robust sensitivity analysis was performed and completed in September. And then from there, we shared the methods with our NCSCS colleagues for awareness and technical feedback on the methodology, which is ongoing. With that, let me delve into each of these milestones to give a little bit more detail, and we'll start with the prototype. So the National Science and Engineering Index creates a single score by combining multiple indicators through a weighting process for each state or country included in the data. These scores can then be compared across the other states or countries in the dataset. The index is broken down along 3 lines to match with the thematic reports, and we've got talent, discovery, and translation. These 3 sub-indexes are then combined into the overall National Science and Engineering Index. And the power of this approach is that we obtain index scores for talent, to discovery, and to translation independently, as well as an overall score. Additionally, since the inputs are all time series data, we can examine the evolution of the scores over time. For the state-level index, indicators are sourced from the Science and Engineering Indicators state indicators and cover 16 data series for the talent index, 7 for the discovery index, and 5 for the translation index. Each sub-index is weighted independently, and some of the indicators covered are listed here on the slide, though this is not an exhaustive list of the indicators included. The international index is comprised of different indicators pulled from the thematic reports. At the international level, some indicators that are available to us domestically are not available internationally, and some state-level indicators don't translate as well to international comparisons, thus the reason for choosing some slightly different indicators for that. So moving on, I'd like to briefly visit the model sensitivity analysis to let you know the progress on that. So to test the robustness of the model, it was put through a number of different tests. First, the stability of the index weights for each indicator was examined to ensure that the weights aren't overly influenced by things such as a high standard error or small sample sizes. The model's sensitivity to noise was also examined to ensure it's not sensitive to small variations in the data, such as measurement noise or sampling errors. The model was also tested for sampling effects and sampling bias by evaluating whether different subsets of the data lead to the same conclusions. And finally, the impact of data gathered during and following the COVID-19 pandemic was tested by comparing results with and without pandemic-era data to make sure it wasn't unduly influencing the results. And as a result of some of this analysis, some of the indicators were not included in the prototype, and there are several different reasons for that. One of those is that some indicators are not reported annually. Things like certain test scores are reported on a much longer time period, so they are not as suitable for time series analysis, and others can suffer from low sample sizes in certain domains. So I want to finish up by briefly discussing where we're going next and what we're aiming to achieve in the future. So our next step is we've shared the index documentation with the chief statistician of NCSES for awareness and technical feedback on the methodology. And in the coming weeks, NSBO staff will meet with NCSES to discuss their feedback on the methodology. And the goal of this is to get feedback, obtain feedback, hear about best practices, and hear suggestions that would improve our modeling approach. And so that sums it up for the update. With that, I'd like to thank the committee for their time and hand the floor back to Julia.
Thank you very much, Andrew. You've put in a tremendous amount of time and energy and intellectual content to what we've achieved, what you have achieved to this point, and it's very exciting to see its process and how much progress you've made. And I know I very much look forward to seeing it continue and seeing it be launched on an appropriate timescale. Is there discussion? Let's see. I see Suresh. I think that was Suresh.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a tiny little picture. Yes. Okay, Suresh. Why don't you ask the question you put in the chat?
Okay, so for the time series, is it going to start 2024, 2025? Or we'll be looking back around 5 years and then coming back to this. So how are you planning to do this, Andrew? So
yeah, so just looking at the kind of time availability on the state indicators, at least, it looks like we can go back as far as about 10 years to maximize kind of coverage on the indicators. Not all indicators have been tracked going back in time. Some of them are kind of newer indicators, and so we just kind of picked a starting point that maximized coverage.
Right. I think being able to go back something like 10 years, I think is really important. I just know from my own eyeballing of indicators over that time period that a lot of things have changed. And, and I'm anticipating we are going to see some extremely rapid changes going forward as well. So having some historical perspective, I think, will be very important. Perhaps you could talk about next steps, Andrew.
Yeah. So we're gonna go through this sort of internal consultation process, kind of get feedback internally and hear about like the best practices and whether or not the modeling approach is the best one to follow, and use some of that feedback to improve it and kind of come back with a version 2. And hopefully what we're trying to do is look at things like normalizations and whether the indicators are, comparable internationally, and see if there are any additional data sources that we might want to include that might not have been captured in the initial sweep. And then hopefully once we do that, we'll have a more robust set to move forward with.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Yolanda.
Hi, this is amazing. I want to tell Andrew that we've talked about this topic before. I'm really impressed with all the work that you've been able to do. Nothing like leaving somebody alone to really think about a problem, and you're a very deep thinker. So I'm very grateful for this. This is great. One thing that I wanted to mention is that it seems that this is built in a very data-aware perspective or data-driven perspective, but it's very important to define indices that come from a decision-making perspective. So I think this would complement what you've done so far, and maybe it's something to consider in the future, but to think about different constituencies of decision makers and the kind of aggregate information that they would like to see. So think of a hospital, right? Maybe the doctor's board would like to see, the impact of certain changes on patient well-being, etc., versus the administrators versus somebody else. So consulting with decision makers, and this may result in several indices, but once you have the framework defined, those are just different kind of front ends to the data. So I think that would be very helpful. The other thing is that I think that we have to consider the very deep changes that are happening to our ecosystem at the moment. And the more that we are able to show with these indices the tipping points and show early detection of profound changes to come, the more helpful this will be. We know that the registration of international students is going down significantly and is expected to continue to go down. How will that affect different programs, particularly PhD programs? How does the funding landscape and the different ways for the government to release funding affect other things? So the earlier that we can quantify or flag these tipping points, I think that will be most helpful. And rather than looking back 10 years, as others were saying, the data might be very different. Even in the last, 5 years, the last 3 years, I think the last year has been a big change. So being able to quantify that change and the effects of those changes would be very critical for us to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yolanda. Yeah, that really important points. Joan.
Thank you. This is very exciting and so wonderful to have the great detail that you've provided, Andrew and team. Thank you for this. And if we get another lapse in appropriations, there'll be more time to even. Sorry, that wasn't very good. Anyway, this is fantastic. Having been very heavily involved with NCES and U.S. Department of Ed in the years of the releases of some of these international comparative studies for K-12 students in mathematics and science, those generate, and those are simple to understand pretty much, right? They're based on a test. They aren't an index with this level of complexity and nuance and selection that has to go on to decide what gets in there. But those generated in those years, and they still do to some extent, front page headlines in countries and in states when they release state by state data that, like, we need to change immediately what we're going to do because of X, Y, or Z. I don't think it's too soon to start to think about how the rollout would happen, who the international partners might be in preparing leaders as appropriate in the science counterparts of NSF in those countries for this to come, because it will be, I think, quite a splash. And that could be in a very good way, but we would not want the NSF or the NSB to somehow be seen as picking favorites or pronouncing anything. So just a plea to start very early with OLPA on how to think about the rollout.
Well, there's that, and then there's also the review before it goes public to make sure we've done everything in our power to catch the things that could be embarrassing. We are out of time, but if the next three can go quickly, I would like to get through the rest of the comments. So thank you, Joan. Matt, over to you.
Real quick, I'm especially interested in the national indicator, which is going to be hugely important. Now, a lot of the big items in there don't clearly appear to be normalized, like number of degrees in a state, by the number of people in the state, or normalized by a total dollar amount of activity in the state. But maybe that I'm misunderstanding that. One thing that you did mention, I'm a big numbers guy, is that although it mentions some things here about math performance by state and so on, that we won't be able to use test scores. And you said it's either because we don't get them every year, which might not be fatal, or they're delayed. I wasn't quite clear because that would be so useful. It's a national uniform number. We have very few of those. to compare. We have tons and tons of things about inputs. We have very, very little about outputs. But anyway, generally, I'm thrilled about this. This is just great.
Yeah, and that sounds like a conversation that is probably
Yeah.
worth taking offline for the moment, and
Right.
I'm sure it will come back when we're ready to
Sure.
think about
It's a
going
detail.
public. So, yeah, thank you, Matt. Juan.
Real quick, I love it. And I just want to throw something out there, Andrew, like you needed more work. But I think it would be cool, and Julie, we could talk about this later. When this is rolled out, could there be an interactive version available? So a state could go in and put in numbers and see what would happen, as an example.
Wow, that's an interesting idea, and probably worth making sure we talk about it later. But a very intriguing possibility. So thanks for bringing that up. Okay, we are at the end of the time allotted for this open meeting of the SEP, and this meeting is adjourned at 32 minutes after the hour. Thank you all.